February 14, 1951, 23:18 at night. In Central Korea, 15 kilometers north of Wonju, Captain James Milburn sat on the defensive line. He held a written order: hold current position. Do not leave the trench. Repel enemy attack with firepower. Counterattack forbidden. The order was clear. The procedure was explicit. But Milburn knew the order would kill them. Ahead, in the darkness, 2 regiments of the Chinese People's Liberation Army were gathering. 2,500 soldiers. They would attack at dawn. Milburn's company was 148 men. They had withdrawn to the defensive trench. The order was to wait. But Milburn did not wait. At 1:30, contrary to orders, he conducted a night raid with 60 men. He infiltrated Chinese lines. He hit the command center. In 2 hours, he scattered the enemy regiment. When morning came, the expected attack did not come. Because the attacker had already attacked. Milburn had violated the order. But he had saved the front. The problem was this: military doctrine did not allow disobedience. But reality did not conform to doctrine. The first 6 months of the Korean War had been mobile. Forward, backward, encirclement, escape. But in early 1951, the war had frozen. Fronts had stabilized. Both sides had settled into fortified positions. American and UN forces in the south, Chinese and North Korean forces in the north. Between them was 10 to 20 kilometers of no man's land. This period was called the static war period. The doctrine of static warfare was simple: maintain your position, wear down the enemy, apply pressure with artillery and air power. The war was not being won, but it was not being lost. The goal was to create strategic balance and negotiate at the table. The American army had been trained for this doctrine. The final year of World War II had seen similar warfare in Europe. Fortified lines. Heavy artillery. Heavy casualties. The winner was the side whose resources were not exhausted. America had the resource advantage. China had the manpower advantage. American doctrine was to kill Chinese soldiers. But the death rate did not deter China. Because China could send millions of soldiers. Each loss was replaced. America counted each loss. Public opinion had begun to question casualties. The war was not popular. It was dragging on. No end was in sight. The defensive doctrine was designed to minimize casualties. Do not leave the trench, because you become a target in the open. Do not counterattack, because it increases the risk of loss. Maintain your position, because it is controllable. Rely on artillery and air support, because technology is cheaper than people. This doctrine was logical on paper. But in the field, it was not working. Because Chinese forces were fighting differently. Chinese tactics were based on human waves. Night attacks. Silent infiltration. Mass assault. Fear and shock effect. American soldiers fired from trenches, but the waves did not stop. One wave was repelled, the second came. Then the third. Fourth. Ammunition was running out. Fatigue was increasing. And finally, Chinese forces reached the trench. At that point, the fighting became hand-to-hand. And in hand-to-hand combat, numerical advantage won. Captain Milburn had watched this cycle for 3 weeks. Every night, Chinese infiltrations. Every morning, body count. Both Chinese and American. Even if the casualty ratio favored Americans, the absolute number of casualties was increasing. His company had dropped from 168 to 148. Reinforcements were coming, but inexperienced soldiers were coming. Inexperienced soldiers died in the first engagement. Milburn faced a mathematical problem: defense was slowly losing. Not losing quickly, but losing. And in the long run, that meant defeat. Milburn was a West Point graduate. He had taken tactics courses. He knew defensive strategies. But he had also studied history. No one won defensive wars. Defense bought time. But offense won wars. Milburn was questioning the doctrine. But doctrine was an indisputable order. The superior commander, Colonel Richard Stevens, had been clear: no unit may attack without permission. Hold your positions. This is an order. But on the night of February 13th, the situation changed. An intelligence report came in. 2 Chinese regiments are gathering 15 kilometers north. Major attack expected at dawn. Target: the line held by Milburn's company. Artillery support was requested. But artillery reported they could not conduct preliminary strikes due to ammunition restrictions. They could only provide support during the attack. Air support was requested. Air power was not conducting night operations. They would have to wait until morning. Milburn calculated. 2,500 Chinese soldiers would attack 148 American soldiers. Artillery support limited. No air support. They would rely on the defensive trench. But their trenches had been damaged after 3 weeks of bombardment. Some sections had collapsed. Wire fences had been cut. Mines were nearly depleted. Milburn's company could hold for 2 hours. Then they would be crushed. Milburn considered an option, contrary to orders: a preemptive attack. Strike Chinese forces before they were organized. A night raid. Fast, aggressive, with a small unit. The goal was not to destroy the enemy, but to scatter them. Hit the command center. Cut communications. Create chaos. Chinese forces would be forced to postpone the morning attack. Maybe cancel it. At minimum, time would be gained. But this plan was contrary to doctrine. The order was defense. Attack was forbidden. Milburn would be violating orders. Military discipline violation meant court-martial. End of career. Maybe prison. But his company's life changed the question from career or death. Milburn made his decision. He called his senior sergeant, John Reeves. "I need 60 volunteers. We're conducting a night raid." Reeves was surprised. "Sir, isn't the order to defend?" Milburn looked at him. "The order is to hold the position." "I'm holding the position. Just with a different method." Reeves smiled. "I understand, sir. I'll find the volunteers." Within an hour, 60 soldiers were ready. Milburn explained the plan. They would divide into 3 teams. First team would infiltrate Chinese lines, clear forward observers. Second team would find the command tent, strike it. Third team would destroy the ammunition depot. The entire operation would last 2 hours. Then they would withdraw. Silence was essential. No fire would be opened, as much as possible. Knife, bayonet, silent movement. At 01:30 in the night, Milburn's team left the trench. The darkness was thick. No moon. Clouds were low. Temperature was -12 degrees. The ground was frozen. Footsteps made little sound. 400 meters to Chinese lines. They used the forest. Advanced silently. In 15 minutes, they came within 50 meters of Chinese sentries. The sentries sat by a fire. They were warming up. They were alert but relaxed. The attack was at dawn. No danger now. Milburn's men silently neutralized the sentries. 6 Chinese soldiers were killed without a sound. The path was open. The second team found the command tent. The tent was large. 15 people were inside. Officers were studying a map. They were planning the morning attack. Milburn's men used hand grenades. They threw them simultaneously at the 4 corners of the tent. Explosions tore through the night silence. The tent collapsed. Everyone inside was killed or wounded. Alarm sounded in the Chinese camp. Soldiers rushed to their weapons. But in the darkness, they found no target. Milburn's men were already moving. The third team found the ammunition depot. The depot was being carried in the backs of trucks. 3 trucks. Full of bombs, shells, rockets. The team threw thermite grenades at the trucks. Thermite burned at 6,000 degrees. Metal melted. Ammunition ignited. First small explosions. Then chain reaction. The trucks exploded into the air. The explosion was heard from 3 kilometers away. The sky lit up. The Chinese camp descended into chaos. Soldiers did not understand where the enemy was coming from. Some ran south. Some ran north. Some hid in trenches. There was no command. Because the commanders were dead. Milburn gave the withdrawal order. 60 soldiers returned the way they came. Chinese soldiers did not pursue. Because they still did not understand what had happened. Milburn's company returned to their own line at 3:45. Total casualties, 2 wounded. Not serious. Chinese casualties, 40 dead, 70 wounded, command collapsed, ammunition destroyed. The morning attack was cancelled. Because there were no commanders left to attack. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Colonel Stevens called Milburn. "What happened last night?" Milburn reported. "We conducted a preemptive raid on enemy lines, sir." Stevens's face changed. "Who gave you that order?" Milburn looked at him. "Your order was to hold the position, sir." "I held the position." Stevens slammed the table. "I did not give permission to attack." "You acted contrary to orders." Milburn remained silent. Stevens continued. "I will open a court-martial. Discipline violation. Unauthorized attack. Disobedience to chain of command." Milburn responded, "Sir, if we had continued to defend, my company would have been destroyed in the morning. We could not defend against 2,500 enemy with 148 soldiers. By going on the offensive, I prevented the enemy's attack. The position was held. Casualties were minimal." Stevens thought. Then he spoke with higher command on the radio. The situation was reported. The superior commander, Major General Edward Armand, called Milburn. "Captain, disobedience to orders is a serious offense. But the result was successful. For now, the investigation is suspended. But you will never violate orders again." "Understood." Milburn replied, "Understood, sir." But both knew doctrine had been questioned. And the question was awaiting an answer. Milburn's raid was not an isolated incident. During the same period, other commanders were making similar moves. The Turkish brigade had conducted a night raid on enemy lines during the Battle of Kunuai. contrary to orders. But successful. A British battalion had applied similar tactics. In the field, commanders were seeing reality: static defense was losing. Active defense gave a chance. In March 1951, the U.S. 8th Army revised its doctrine. A new directive was issued: defensive positions must be supported by offensive power. Commanders may use tactical initiative to disrupt enemy attacks with preemptive strikes. Night patrols and raids are encouraged. The directive did not exonerate Milburn, but it vindicated him. In May 1951, Milburn was promoted to major. No court-martial was opened, because doctrine had changed. And after doctrine changed, the definition of order violation had changed. What Milburn had done was now seen not as violation, but as initiative. But Milburn knew, that night, he had chosen between career and life. And he had chosen life. For the rest of the Korean War, American forces developed active defense tactics. Night patrols became standard. Preemptive strikes entered doctrine. Ranger units received special raid training. The war was still static. But static defense was no longer passive. The defending side was attacking. Because the best defense was preemptive attack. After the war, American military academies studied this lesson. Milburn's case became a case study. Students were asked, was Milburn right? Should he have violated orders? What is more important, discipline or results? Answers varied. But there was a consensus: rigid doctrine kills flexible reality. Commanders must take initiative. But initiative means responsibility. Milburn had taken responsibility. And he had been proven right. But what if he had not been proven right? Then there would have been a court-martial. Career would have ended. Maybe prison. Initiative meant risk. And only those who succeeded became heroes. Milburn returned to America in 1952. He continued his military career. He also served in the Vietnam War. He rose to colonel. When he retired, he was asked in an interview, "That night, when you acted contrary to orders, were you not afraid?" Milburn replied, "I was afraid. But I was more afraid of dying. The order was going to kill me. I chose to survive." Sometimes military discipline conflicts with military reality. Then you make a choice. I made my choice. Today, modern military doctrine incorporates Milburn's lesson. Command and control is centralized. But tactical flexibility is encouraged. Field commanders can take initiative. But they are accountable. Success justifies initiative. Failure opens court-martial. This is not a fair system. But war is not fair. In war, the winner is right. The loser is judged. February 14, 1951, Milburn acted contrary to orders. The order was to defend. He attacked. He saved his company. He changed doctrine. But in one night, with one solitary decision, he influenced the direction of military history. Because sometimes, what is right is related not to what is written, but to what is real. And reality is in the field, not in orders.